Hello everyone and welcome to today's WorkSafe Tasmania Month webinar. I'm Stephanie from WorkSafe Tasmania. Before we start, please read the following slide about information received today. To interact in today's webinar, please use your control panel to type and submit questions to today's presenter. Questions will be answered throughout today's webinar. Webcams are only being used by the moderator and the presenter today, and today's webinar is also being recorded. It is now my pleasure to introduce your presenter today, Georgio. Chris is contracted to the Institute of Quarrying Australia and Director of Task Solutions. Chris has worked as a manager in the construction materials and mining industry for over 10 years. In this time, he has held senior statutory management positions at large hard rock quarries and a mineral sand mine. Chris is passionate about safety in the workplace, ensuring systems and processes are in place to support the workforce to achieve this. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take over from here. So, good day everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Stephanie. So today we'll just have a quick introduction to safety and health management systems and what role they play in the workplace. So we've done the introductions, housekeeping, and questions during the webinar Stephanie's covered. We can skip to the next slide. I'll just get everyone to briefly have a read of this. Again, similar to the previous one from WorkSafe Tasmania. Okay. So the first question is, what is a safety and health management system? Some people know them as a safety health management system, others just know them as a safety management system. So don't get too tied up in the wording, that they're all the same. Okay, so just some things from government agencies as to what is a safety management system. An effective safety and health management system is a dynamic system that, when implemented, ensures that risks to safety and health of mine workers, but in this instance, I know we're going to be talking a lot about mining quarries, but it's all relevant to all workplaces, so we'll just skip past the words of mine and quarries and just relate them back to your workplace. Are at an acceptable level and leads to the continuous improvement of health and safety standards at the workplace. An occupational health safety management system is a coordinated and systematic approach to managing health and safety risks. WorkSafe Victoria. Just waiting for the next slide to load up. A safety management system for a workplace is a tool that assists work operators to systematically achieve and maintain standards for managing safety and health. A safety management system allows the mine operator to demonstrate the effective management of health and safety on site to its employees, its contractors, and others working at the site, to the regulator, to external organisations when seeking certification, management when assessing the mine systems against recognised industry standards. To maximise the safety management system effectiveness, the system needs to be a documented system, be easily understood and accessible. So that's a key one for everyone to take away, that these systems need to be easily understood, so they're not developed just to be understood by the executive or management. They need to be understood by all workers that are associated with that workplace. The other key takeaway from this is they also need to be accessible. And accessible means that if any worker needs to have access to the safety management system, they can get access, they can find it, they can read it without too much trouble. It's not a system or a documented system that's kept away, hidden in places where workers can't access. So what makes up a safety management system? So these are all the key points that make up a safety management system. Management framework, leadership and accountability, that goes into roles, procedural requirements, statutory appointment and positions where needed, planning and performance, implementation, compliance and document control, operational risk management, communication and consultation, behavioural safety awareness and competence, systems of work, incident investigation, emergency management, quality assurance and measurement and evaluation. So we'll cover a lot of these topics as we go through the presentation. So I won't go through them now because we will cover them later on in this presentation. But all these systems are all designed to give us a controlled work environment, which ensures competent people for the tasks that we assign, safe work practices, fit for purpose equipment, which gives us a safe production. So again, we'll cover this a little bit further into the slides as well. Okay. So safety and health management system must be part of a systematic approach and method of managing safety and health. We want to prioritise quality over quantity. And when we talk about prioritising quality over quantity, it's the days are gone where we've got these really big, thick manuals on how to operate safely, but we want to simplify them, make them more understandable to the workforce. So it's really about keeping things brief, but getting to the point of safety. Fundamentally, our goal is to provide a safe workplace with competent people, fit for purpose equipment, and safe systems of work. I just want to touch on a few of these points as we go. So competent people means people that are adequately trained or have the relevant experience for the tasks that they're performing. And in the space of health and safety, when we're talking competent, we're talking about doing the task, performing that job safely. We're not really concerned about whether their efficiencies are there or whether their production levels are up. It's all about being competent to perform that task safely. So we just need to ensure that our workers are actually trained in a safe way to do the work that they do. Fit for purpose equipment. When we're talking about fit for purpose equipment, we are ensuring that the equipment and the tools that we give our workers to use, including the workplace, is fit for the tasks and the work that we assign for them. That's all to do with maintenance, maintaining the equipment, that it's fit and maintained appropriately, but also the equipment is only used in the way that the manufacturer designed it to be used. So making sure we've got the right tools as well. So not using tools, improvising with tools to make them work for other things that they were not designed to do. And safe systems of work. So safe systems of work all goes into our procedures and how we develop the procedures to ensure that the tasks that we assign are carried out in a safe manner. Again, when we've got people that are competent in the task, when we've got people when we've got equipment that's fit to purpose, and we've got safe systems of work, will give us a safe workplace. A little bit easier said than done, but that's all part of a systematic approach and method of managing safety and health at your sites. Okay, so are you implementing safe systems of work? Can you demonstrate that you've systematically identified hazards and consequential risks at your workplace? Can you demonstrate that you have planned to make the site safer? Who is accountable for implementing the plan and what are their roles and responsibilities? Is the plan working? That's something that we continuously need to be auditing and monitoring to make sure that our safe systems of work or our safety management system is working. and how about do we do that? But we'll touch on that a little bit later on. Have you consulted and involved the right people in making the operation safer? So have we spoken to the workers? Have we spoken to subject matter experts? Have we had group meetings and so on? Can you demonstrate you are maintaining records and updating your plan to ensure it remains current and compliant? Are you meeting your legal obligations? So to meet your legal obligations, and from state to state they don't vary, and I'm pretty sure they're nearly identical in Tasmania, but all these things that we've just, the 6 points before the last point, all are about meeting your legal obligation. And by meeting your legal obligation, you also ensure the workers' health and safety. Just for any questions there, Stephanie, if anyone has any questions?
No questions, Chris.
Cool. Okay, so safety and health management systems, they are a legal obligation. I'm not going to go to, I'm going to skip through these slides because we don't need to do it, and I'll just summarise it all at the end. Okay, so a safety management system is a requirement that you do have a system, a safety management system at your workplace, and you do need to demonstrate that you do have some sort of system that is adequate to manage the hazards and the risks on your work site. So I'll let you all go back to your own industries and standards and code practices and things like that to investigate, but just keep in mind that safety management systems are a requirement from a legal perspective. Our duty of care. This slide's just a little bit slow, so just bear with me. Okay. To ensure so far as reasonably practicable that health and safety of workers and others is not put at risk from work carried out. So others mean, so workers, when we talk about a worker, we also do talk about contractors. So don't think that when we're talking about workers, we're only talking about the people that are directly employed by your company. If you engage in contractors, you also have a duty of care for those people and they're as workers, but there's also other persons as well. So when we're talking other persons, we are talking visitors and we are talking the public. New South Wales. So this means you must eliminate any risk to health and safety so far as reasonably practicable. And if it's not reasonably practicable to eliminate the risk, we must reduce them so far as reasonably practicable. And again, using the hierarchy of control. So if we can't eliminate, we then move into substitution, isolation, engineering, administrative controls, and PPE is our very last resort. So what should a safety management system look like? Systems and processes to ensure workers are adequately trained and assessed and having the knowledge and understanding and skill to carry out their required tasks. Systems and processes to ensure everybody knows what their roles and responsibilities are in the management structure. Systems and processes to ensure everybody is adequately supervised. Systems and processes to ensure that there is adequate time and resources to perform the work. What should a safety, just continuing on from the last one. Systems and processes for identifying hazards and managing associated risks. And that's a really key one there. So you do in your workplace, you need to have some sort of system for identifying hazards and managing the risks associated with those hazards. Generally, each business will have a slightly different model on how they identify hazards and who gets involved in identifying hazards and things like that. But each workplace should have a system to follow to identify hazards and managing the risks associated. Systems and processes to ensure equipment is fit for purpose, including fixed and mobile plant, electrical installations, hazardous substances and dangerous goods, ground conditions, vehicle interactions, and so on. And systems and processes to ensure everyone at the workplace is adequately prepared for any reasonable foreseeable emergency. Again, with the emergency side of things, you need to assess what potential incidences could result in emergency response at your workplace, and have a system in place to respond to any sort of emergency that might occur. And that comes in your emergency response management plans. So where do we start? A workplace risk assessment. So use a workplace inspection checklist if you have one, or simply record your findings for future analysis and assessment. Have a walk around your workshops, your factories, your shop floors, your retail stores, wherever it might be that you work. Have a walk around, but have a walk around with your workers and identify hazards. Identify what things can harm someone. Once you've identified all your hazards, then you obviously need to put your adequate controls in place to ensure that those hazards aren't going to hurt anybody. Don't try to solve every problem at once. You know, I think we do walk around or we do see a lot of things, and we think we need to jump on everything at once. But I think we just need to, it's all about taking a more systematic approach. Take your high priority issues that you have at a really high level and work your way. Really control the things that are really going to hurt people first, and just go one by one, you know, and put the controls in place instead of trying to hit everything at once. You might find that trying to hit everything at once, you won't adequately control most of the hazards. Ensure you consider language and literacy levels of your team. So when you are conducting a risk assessment with your teams, that's something, you know, we are working in quite a multicultural environment, and we also are working with different literacy levels. You know, we work with executives, we work with people that have finished apprenticeships, we work with people that do have literacy challenges. So we need to ensure that when we are risk assessing, when we are talking to our workers, that we're using the right language and we're using the right forum where people can understand and communicate with us. And a good way to get that is to actually ask your workers, what's the best way to communicate with you? It's something that we don't do. We try to make assumptions, and then we try to probably work out ourselves on how we're going to communicate, but probably the easiest thing to do is just ask the workers what's the best way to communicate. So when we're talking about ensuring and considering the language and literacy levels of your team, customised communication, the content and delivery, and consider the learning styles. Now, people are going to be visual, oral, verbal, physical, social. You know, some people might want to see a PowerPoint presentation. Other people want to be on the front line, seeing things as they happen. Other people want to read. Other people just want to listen. So again, these are the things that we need to consider to ensure that we capture everyone we're trying to capture. This is just a sample risk assessment from a workplace. I'm sure you've all seen risk assessments. They do vary. Risk assessment comes in, you know, in forms of risk assessments, or some people have HAZOPs or HAZIPs, and so on. But again, fundamentally, all risk assessments identify the hazards, the description of the risk. So what kind of harm or can that hazard cause? What would be the incident, and what would be the consequence of that incident? Generally, you'd want to put in where on your work site that might occur. You give it an initial risk scoring. Now, the initial risk scoring needs to be scored without any control. So you need to take your time back and say, you know what, this is the hazard, this is what can happen, and we've got no controls. What's the potential? Then you introduce your control measures, give it a responsibility, and then you would also go down the track to then give it a residual score to say, right, before any controls, it was at this rating, and then once we've put some controls, we've now reduced the risk score for it. So I'm sure you've all seen risk assessments before. A management structure. So you need to have a management structure, and this includes who's responsible for what, and what is the provision for adequate supervision. And when we're talking about adequate supervision, we need to ensure that we risk assess the experience, the skill level of our workforce. We also need to understand how many people there are in the workforce, and risk assess what adequate supervision actually looks like. Also, when we're talking adequate supervision, we need to take into consideration what is the backup plan when our supervisors or people that are responsible for supervision are not at work. When they're sick, when they're on annual leave or things like that, what system do we have in place to ensure that someone slots straight into that supervisory role to ensure that we've always got adequate supervision. It's not just about having supervisors and then when they're not there, there's no supervision. It's making sure that we have adequate supervision whenever your business is operating.
A question has come through, Chris. Safety systems are demanding more resources, time, personnel, etc., now more than ever, which is great that we put an emphasis on this. But do you see it continuing on an upward trajectory of consuming resources? And at what point will this start levelling out? Will this purely be based on statistics for the industry? In your opinion, how important are safety reps in the workplace?
Really good question. So I'll start from the back end of that question. Safety reps in the workplace are really important. I think I really think that each workplace needs to have an adequate number of safety reps. Now, when we're talking safety reps, are they just people with a safety role in that workplace? Maybe, but are they also, do we consider our health and safety reps as our safety reps as well? So again, each workplace will need to assess number of workers, the complexity of the work, and also the dangers involved in the work that we do, and that needs to be determined. When we're talking safety management systems, it's interesting what I've seen, and I can only talk by experience, but we've seen the safety management systems only really being emphasised, I would say, in the last 7, 8, maybe, look, let's stretch it out to 10 years in a lot of industry. And so what we've done is we're trying to capture it all, and we're on this uphill trajectory on trying to play catch up, so to speak. I've actually seen, well, I've been part of developing safety management systems, and at the start it's really laborious, but once you actually develop your systems and you go into monitoring and auditing mode, it's not that laborious, and it's not that resource intensive where we need to have so many resources there. But again, back to the point, like most people think that they've got to start from scratch. Your workplace already has a system in place. Grab that and try to work with the system that you've already got and make it what it needs to be. Yes, you might need to draw in some extra resources to get it up off the ground and to get to that point. But once you've got your safety management system in place, it really is more about monitoring and auditing. Does that answer the question? And I might just throw back to you, Stephanie. Do you think that's answered the question?
Yes. I mean, if that's not the case, please let us know.
Yeah, let us know. So and safety. Look, safety is there is more focus on safety today than there was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I can only assume in the next 5, 10 years, there'll be more focus on safety than what there was in 2022. So this whole idea about safety going away, it won't go away. Where Australia right now is going through a massive resource boom and retail boom and everything else. So that also heightens our risk profile, which then we need to step up to match the risk to keep our people safe.
Thanks.
Safe plant and equipment. So again, in our safety management system, we need to provide and maintain safe plant and equipment. This will include a minimum safety specifications, requirements for inspections and checks. I just want to go back to that slide, sorry. So when we're talking minimum safety specifications, most industries will have a code of practice, Australian standards, so MDG, design guidelines, and so on. But for your workplace, you actually need to risk assess what your workplace minimum safety specifications are for your plant and equipment. So it's not just about getting something off the shelf and saying, oh, this is what they do out in this place, so we'll do the same. It's about risk assessing and ensuring that you've got the adequate safety specification for your plant, whether it be mobile plant or fixed plant or your workplaces. Just ensure that you have a standard, and whatever that standard looks like is what that standard, you don't drop under that standard, not for your contractors that come in, not for anyone else. It will be your workplace standard. And then you also identify what your requirements for inspections and checks are, whether they're daily, whether they're weekly, or so on. But again, that's all to do with the plant that you have. Provide and maintain safe systems of work. So when we're talking maintaining, we don't only maintain trucks and plants and electrical equipment, things like that. We also need to maintain our safe systems of work. So this includes processes such as ongoing risk assessment, safe work method statements, safe operating procedures, and requirements for record keeping. So when we maintain, it's all about reviewing our safe systems of work. It's reviewing our risk assessments, reviewing our safe work method statements, our SOPs and JSAs, all the stuff that we use to keep us safe. We review them and we make sure that they're current. We make sure that how we once developed this work, this system of work, is still current and accurate to the work that we're doing today. And the controls that we once implemented are also still adequate to ensure workers' health and safety. And then there's a requirement for record keeping. So once we change any of our safe work systems, we need to keep a record of why we changed it. What was the change and why did we change it? Most documents now, if you have a look at them, have version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. The reason we have our V1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on is there are versions, and that's some sort of record keeping to understand where we've been. But again, it is a really important thing that we keep a record of why we change our systems. Provide and maintain safe arrangements for safe use and handling and storage for chemicals and hazardous substances, including things like explosives. So we need to have a system. What's our system of accepting hazardous substances, storing them on site, and how do people actually handle them? You know, that system, risk assessment, SOPs, but also your safety data sheets and things like that. Safe systems of work. Provide and maintain safe arrangements for safe use, handling, and storage of chemicals. So as we discussed, safety data sheets, emergency and incident response and processes. So when you do have hazardous substances on site, you must have an emergency and incident response to deal with any incident involving chemicals and hazardous substances. Facilities and infrastructure for safe storage, transport and use. So again, it's not just about accepting chemicals and hazardous equipment or hazardous substances. You need to be able to demonstrate that you've got facilities, the infrastructure, and so on in place to manage. Safe working conditions, maintain the workplace in a safe condition. But this includes, requirements for housekeeping and maintenance, traffic management plans, emergency response and management plans, and provide workers and contractors with adequate facilities. So requirement for housekeeping and maintenance, again, like our machines, like our plants and vehicles and things like that, our workplaces need to be maintained. So what are the requirements for housekeeping and maintenance? Your safety management system needs to be able to demonstrate that at this particular workplace, this is how we manage our housekeeping and maintenance. This is how we clean the place, this is how we keep things tidy and reduce the hazards from potential fires or other things in the space of housekeeping. And how do we maintain it? What's our inspection regime look like to ensure that our workplace is as intended from its original form to be safe for our workers to occupy? Our traffic management plans, again, how do we, what's our traffic plan look like, and how do we maintain that it's always accurate? Some people work in places where there's always all these different moving parts, and a lot of those moving parts move in and out of traffic areas. We need to ensure that there's a maintenance of that to ensure that traffic areas are always kept clear, or if there is different routing of traffic management of traffic areas, how do we communicate that to the wider workforce every time we change? Emergency responses and management plans, again, with emergency response, a lot of places do unfortunately develop an emergency response and it's a set and forget. But how do we maintain that? Again, every time you make a change in your workplace and you start changing your systems, you really need to go back to the emergency response plan and ensure that that hasn't been impacted. And if it has, you need to make the adequate changes in your emergency response to accommodate any changes and any unforeseeable or foreseeable hazards that might have introduced that could cause an emergency. Emergency responses, just about in every state, I think it's just a standard that if you don't have, you do need to test your emergency response plans and how you respond to an emergency at least 12 monthly, or you can test it, which we, the last resort, and what we don't want to do, you don't want to be testing it in the time of an emergency, but at least 12 monthly, you should have an emergency response drill to test your systems. And then when we're talking about emergency response testing system, one thing that a lot of people forget to do is engage with your external emergency response providers, your fire brigade or your CFA, your police, your ambulance, and so on. So it's a really good idea that when you're testing those, just engage with them, because generally they're going to be responding to any sort of emergency at your workplace as well. And does your emergency response on site tie into external services that will be coming to assist? Provide workers and contractors with adequate facilities. So when we're talking adequate facilities, we want to talk, they've got to make sure that we've got adequate lunchrooms, adequate bathrooms, rest areas, first aid facilities. Again, we're multicultural backgrounds, places for prayer, if people need to pray, ensuring that that we've got facilities that accommodate both genders as well, is really important that those are in place. Training and supervision, ensuring workers have adequate information, training and supervision. So the requirement for induction and training. So your safety management system needs to have a stepped out procedure or process of how we induct and then how do we train our workers. Standards and processes for verification of competency. Standards for maintaining currency of training and competency. I just want to loop back to the VOC or verification of competence. Once upon a time, if you had a high-risk license or any license to operate a bit of equipment or perform a bit of work, that was good enough to go to work with. Industry now, we're pushing with VOCs, and that's verification of competency. So we can't just take people on face value that they can operate bits of equipment or perform a task. We need to actually verify that they can do it safely with the tools that we provide them in our work environment, if that makes sense. So they need to demonstrate, and that's how we verify their competency, that they can perform the task or operate equipment with the tools of that workplace in that workplace environment and how we do it safely. So it's not just about ensuring that someone's got a license that they might have had for years, but haven't actually used that skill for some time. It's our responsibility to ensure that they can actually operate safely on our sites. And then we also need standards for maintenance and currency of training and competency. So you need to, again, it's not a set and forget. You don't train someone and just let them be forever and a day. It's, what are the retrain, what are the refresher requirements? What's the upskilling that we might need to continue on with? How do we train people when new technologies or different equipment come on site? You might have one brand of machine, you've swapped that out for another brand of machine. What's the requirement there to train that person so they're actually familiar with the current equipment that we have on site? Processes in how we do things, again, they might change for many reasons. We need to retrain our workers once things change. It's not just about, it'll be right, they'll work it out. That doesn't fly anymore. It's about training and ensuring people are competent in the work that they do. They need to be given the adequate information. So you can't just be really brief about information and instruction that you're giving people. You need to give them adequate information. You need to give them all the information into what they're doing and why they're actually performing that task. It's really important that our workers, don't just know about the task, but know why they're actually doing it and what are the potential hazards associated with that task. And obviously supervision. So we need to ensure adequate supervision. And when we're talking adequate supervision, again, it doesn't mean that the supervisor needs to stand there and watch over people like a hawk 24/7. It means it needs to be assessed to what is adequate. How many times does a supervisor need to, or someone in the supervisory role need to come and check in, and so on. And again, that comes back to skill level, experience base, and the complexity and the risk level of the task that's being performed. Okay. Systems to monitor workers' health. This includes requirement for fitness for work, medicals and health surveillance, and drug and alcohol. Requirements for fitness for work. So again, your safety management system needs to spell out what are the requirements, what do we deem is fit for work? Well, what kind of work are we doing, and what will we expect our workers to be? In what state do we expect them to be fit for work? Medicals and health surveillance. So we need to understand what sort of medical and health surveillance are we going to provide our workplace, our workers in the workplace. Again, this comes down to what are the tasks involved in the work that we do. Do we work in an environment where there's quite a bit of dust, or there's quite a bit of noise, a lot of vibration, a lot of manual handling, all that sort of stuff. If you work in an environment, you'll need to monitor your workers' health more regularly to ensure that we're not deteriorating their health with the work that we're performing. Again, less hazardous environments, you might not need to do medical to health surveillance at all. Again, it really depends on the environment that you work with. But I know if you, a couple of really high or sensitive topics at the moment around respirable dust and crystalline silica and things like that. If you are working in environments where there is dust and there is respirable crystalline silica or all that sort of stuff, you would need to, if you're not already, consult with subject matter experts and put a system in place to monitor your workers' health in those fields. And then monitoring your workers' health, it's not just the right thing to do, it's actually a good thing to do. But also it ensures that you know that your controls are working or not, and you might need to make a change. So please get that. And again, where there's quite a bit of noise, where there's quite a bit of vibration or manual handling, again, talk to some experts and say, hey, what do we need to do to ensure that we're not deteriorating our workers' health? Drugs and alcohol, again, I don't know if there's a place now that doesn't have a drug and alcohol policy, but you should have a drug and alcohol policy on how you manage people in the workplace that could potentially be working under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and how that ties into fatigue and mental health as well.
A question has come through, Chris, around fatigue and how have you seen fatigue managed? In this instance, the company will use a formula, for example, number of hours worked and number of hours slept. Surely there is a better way.
Yeah, there is. Everyone associates fatigue with sleep and hours work. And whilst that's a really good starting point, managing fatigue, it's not just as simple as, you work 12 hours, have a 10-hour break, and then come back into work and things like that. That's fine. Things that you need to consider when we're managing fatigue is, first ties into back, are people fatigued? Is someone fatigued? Are they using, are they using drugs? Are they drinking heavily at night? What lifestyle choices are these people making that can cause them to be fatigued? Have they got problems going on at home? Are they, or in the workplace that's causing them mental stress that also comes into fatigue? And then you also got to tie it back to the workplace. What kind of work are people doing? And what's the environment that they're working in? Are they working in extreme heat or extreme cold temperatures, which is burning up a lot of their energy just to either stay cool or stay warm? You need to talk, how do we manage it? It's all about education. Really, fatigue's about education. It's about educating our managers and our supervisors and our workforce to identify when someone is fatigued and to look further than just how many hours have you worked and what's your rest break. It's holistic. You've got to take a holistic approach into managing fatigue, and you can't just identify one thing and put it down to, I've worked long hours or I haven't had enough sleep. It comes as a total package. A really good resource to use is employer assistance programs, counsellors, things like that. And I think as workplaces, we do have a responsibility to encourage better lifestyle choices for our workers through education that can help them manage their fatigue. Does that answer? Look, if that hasn't answered your question, please come back to us. But I think, just hours worked and time slept is probably not good enough in this day and age to manage fatigue. There's quite a few factors.
Thanks, Chris.
Systems to ensure consultation and participation. Probably something I do see in industry a lot is we forget to consult. We forget to talk to the workers. We forget to talk to our health and safety representatives and form safety committees on how do we actually approach health and safety. And again, when it comes to what are the requirements of fitness for work and medicals and drugs and alcohol and fatigue, your best starting point is to talk to the workers directly. Is to form a committee, form some, talk to your health and safety reps, talk to the workers themselves and say, hey, what does good look like? In managing all these in health and safety on our site. And if you think about it, our workers are the ones that are probably on the front line and more likely to be hurt. And I can guarantee you they don't want to be hurt. So they'll actually give you the right answers if we're willing to listen. So ensure that we consult with our workers. And if you have an effective consultation process, I'm sure that the right controls to manage the hazards and the risks on your site will come out. Examples of a mine or quarry safety management system, but again, doesn't matter. Forget about the words mines and quarries, just relate it back to your workplace. You need to have a policy. You need to have your work health and safety policy. Structure and responsibility, training and competency, consultation, communication and reporting. So you need to have processes or systems for all these. Documentation, how do you document things? How do you identify hazards and manage the risks? What's your process for workplace inspections? Plant, fixed and mobile maintenance, guarding, and so on. What's the process there? How do you manage electrical? How do you manage your contractors? Traffic management. If you do use explosives, the explosive management. Ground control management. Again, this is more mines and civil. Emergency response procedure. How does that look like in your workplace? Will it actually be adequate to respond to an emergency? Your work environment and health surveillance. Again, what are the inherent risks of just doing what we do? And do we need to introduce health surveillance for our workers? What does fitness for work look like? How do you report incidences and investigation? So how do incidences get reported, and then how do you investigate them? And what do you do with that investigation? What do you do with the findings and the actions to come from an investigation? Do they just get written down but no one actions, or do you actually have a process where they'll be followed up and corrective measures will be put in place so that incident doesn't happen again? Change management. How do we manage change in the workplace? That goes with procedures, it goes with introducing new technology, introducing new equipment, introducing new people, more people, less people. Any change in the workplace should go through some sort of change management process. And the change management process is designed to ensure that change isn't going to bring any additional hazards downstream of the change or upstream of the change, or directly involved with the task or process that we're changing. So just introducing change isn't in line with what we should be doing. Before we introduce the change, it really needs to be risk assessed, both upstream and downstream of the change, to ensure that no other risks or hazards are going to be introduced. Audit and management review. So we need to be, we need to ensure that we're auditing and reviewing our safety management systems against the currency, to ensure that what we have in place is keeping our workers safe, and we're not, and what we once thought we were doing, we are still doing. And if any changes need to occur to the safety management system, they can. But again, I do see time and time again that people introduce safety management systems or plans, and again, it's just set and forget, and then they review it in 3 years' time, and they realise that a lot of the stuff that they're meant to be doing or they've said that they would do isn't actually being done for good reasons, generally for good reasons, but we need to always look back to our safety management systems and update them with the changes. Where do you get help for safety management systems? So look, this is again, you know, for mines and quarries and things like that, but you can go to WorkCover Tasmania. I'm sure they've got plenty of stuff that can help you. You can go on, if you go into the mines and quarry regulator space for each state. Look, mines and quarries are quite heavily regulated, and this stuff is things that we do every day. So if you're not in that space, there's some really good things that you can pick up from those forums, from those places as well. IQA, again, go into the IQA and you can, quarry.com.au. There's plenty of resources there as well regarding safety management systems and kits and things like that. Okay, with 8 minutes to spare, is there any lagging questions out there, Stephanie, or anyone else want to shoot through some questions?
Yes, so no questions have come through just yet, Chris, but as Chris has said, there is still time for people to type and submit their questions in the questions window on their control panel. Today's presentation is also part of WorkSafe Tasmania month, so please do head to worksafe.tas.gov.au to see what other online webinars we are running this week and what in-person events and activities we have running over the following 2 weeks. WorkSafe month is run throughout the month of October and is also part of National Safe Work Month. No further questions appear to be coming through, Chris. So thank you very much for your presentation today. And today's webinar has also been recorded and will be made available on WorkSafe Tasmania's YouTube channel. WorkSafe Tasmania month is an initiative funded by the WorkCover Tasmania Board, delivered by WorkSafe Tasmania. Thank you to today's presenter, Chris Georgio, Contractor to the Institute of Quarrying Australia and Director of Task Solutions, and thank you to everyone for attending.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie.